Hello and welcome to Q Primary Presents Intentional Tech. I am your host, Kayla Harlow, a former first grade teacher, ed tech advocate, yet limited screen time parent. In today's episode, I chat with Joe and Kristin Merrill of the Merrill's EDU about how to prioritize creation over consumption when implementing and integrating technology into our primary classrooms. Together, Joe and Kristin share 20 years of teaching experience. And although they teach different grades, first and fourth, they collaborate to create engaging lessons that turn into memories for their students. The Merrills put a new spin on traditional strategies and implementing technologies to meet the needs of every student. Not only are they both full time teachers and parents, they are also authors, speakers nationally, and lead their own interactive PD. In today's episode, we touch on how novel effect and Buncee can be used in the classroom to further implement an engaging technology strategy with young learners. So, without further ado, hi, Joe. Hi, Kristin. Hi, guys. Thanks for coming on and joining me on Intentional Tech. We are so excited to have you. And we can't wait to talk about how you guys prioritize creation over consumption. And you guys have a lot on your plate. Can you talk a little bit about what roles you guys hold currently as a team, as a married couple, as parents?
Yeah, well, that was kind of it. We are married. We are both teachers. We currently have the benefit of getting to teach in the same school, but we're kind of on opposite ends. And we do have two young, well, they're not really young anymore, two young children. Fourth grade. Our fourth grader is actually in my class this
I was
year.
going to say, do you teach him?
I do. And then we have a seventh grader.
Yeah, just so that we're on the even playing field here, I had our fourth grader in my class in first grade too. So I also was in that battle, but so I know what she's going through every day. But yeah, so we're very fortunate to be in the situation that we are at the same school with our son, and it's really neat because we get to see the learning that's happening. Not just because obviously he's in that class, but we've seen him growing up through the school, both of our kids, and so it's been really cool to see that and experience that.
That's awesome. Well, props to you because I could never teach my own child. I gave him to my former student teacher, so I know what he's getting, but we had to draw that line. So awesome. Well, you guys have really mastered a way to integrate creation with the ed tech in an intentional manner. So, can you kind of just give me a brief synopsis of what creativity looks like in a modern classroom? I know you're teaching first and you're teaching fourth, so you have a really kind of clear perspective on that.
Yeah, I think the most important thing in the primary classroom is just identifying the talents of our students and really making sure that we use those talents in their learning, whether it's in an illustration or whether it's with a song maybe or some type of performance, whatever that looks like. Building that creativity and using that to your advantage as a sense of an educator, so that they can retain that information is a really powerful thing. And it's obviously a science that goes behind that, and by no means are we the masters of it, but we're trying to use it to the best of our abilities and just trying to get the kids excited about their learning again.
Yeah, I think creativity is noisy. I think when I think
Yes.
of a creative classroom, I think of kids like talking and doing things, revising their work. So like it can be a little messy. Like it might look like it's time consuming or it might look like it's unorganized. But lots of times creativity, you have to like kind of go with what, like you said, like what they're going with, and then maybe pivot a little bit or change what you were going to do based on how they reacted. It's also like bringing the kids a little bit out of their comfort zone, I think too, and saying, hey, we're going to try this, and like let's just see how it works, let's see if you like it, because sometimes they discover these talents or they discover that they like things that they just haven't been exposed to yet either.
Yeah, some of that is just the fear of making the
Hmm.
mistake, right? Especially when it
Yeah.
comes to the integration of tech. A lot of times you have kids that are afraid to push buttons because they've been trained for so long that like
Don't.
something's going to go wrong or it's going to break. And the first thing that we always do, usually the first day of school, we say, listen, there's nothing that you're going to do that we can't fix. Don't worry about it. Push all the buttons, just don't push them all.
Right? Get it out of your system. No,
Right.
that's something that I talk about with a lot of the teachers I work with is when you're talking about ed tech and integration, both for teachers and students, is to get comfortable with the uncomfortable because that's where that growth and that's where the magic happens. And we also talk about fail as your first attempt in learning. Like that is kind of valuable to our learning process. So I completely agree. So talking about that creativity, how can the use of creativity in the classroom lead to engagement, specifically on two tools that I'm not as familiar with, Novel Effect and Buncee? Can you kind of delve into those and how they would be used in a primary classroom?
All right. Well, the reading
That's a
teacher in
loaded
me, yeah,
question.
I'm like,
Sorry.
which one do I want to start with? Okay, so maybe like a little bit of a breakdown of what each of those things are, and then we could kind of talk about how they could be used. So, Novel Effect is a wonderful program. I'd have to say in the last couple of years has really taken off, which basically like narrates um a book you read. So I love to read books out loud to my kids. You know, sometimes we're silly and we make the voices. And what it allows you to do is allows you to read that book and then it chimes in with music or sound
Soundscapes. Yeah.
effects or things like so the guy's walking up the stairs and go pom pom pom. And it's just so fun because I think sometimes kids lose that magic of reading and they lose that love of being lost in a story. And so I've seen it used, you know, to engage students at the beginning of a story, but I've also seen teachers like allow like younger kids to like almost practice their fluency with it, like go sit in a corner and read and listen, you know, to the sounds and things that go with it. So that program really has all sorts of ways it can be integrated.
And one of you just hit the nail on the head there because one of the things is if you have your kids using it, they can put on headphones and they can still use it so they're not distracting the whole class. But what it teaches them is they need to slow down when they read. You can't just fly
Yes.
through the book, and if you do, then all those soundscapes are just going to be kind of all over the place. And so, what it teaches them to do, it teaches them to slow down and pace it, and it really helps with the fluency.
So, like any ed tech, you know, there's like those soft skills. So it's primarily used for the engagement and reading, but there's so many other little soft skills that the kids can learn or grow in with using it. And then Buncee is now part of Capstone. So it's used a little bit differently than our primary way that we used it, but I mean, think of like I can't even say slide design. It's almost like
Right? It's like
a
there's like
design program for younger primary kids.
yeah, it's very appropriate. Everything is a safe search, and so you don't have to worry about images popping up that shouldn't be there. And the kids can create these really like highly entertaining slide
Yeah.
designs that have animations or just still images. And
Links
there's
out, there was
yeah,
audio, like there's so many things, but it's super kid friendly. So when you open it, the buttons are very big and like symbolic of what you're working on. It doesn't take a lot of explanation. There's not too many places to click or too many things that you can get, you know, lost in.
and I think you just mentioned, but they have a partnership with Capstone now. And if you are a primary teacher, chances are you've done some type of research writing somewhere down the line. And the Capstone program, Pebble Go, which is an offshoot of
Mm.
Capstone, is the best research platform for primary kids. It is unbelievable. I mean, they have everything broken down where there's accessibility at the forefront. You can have the articles read aloud to you. There's even like works cited pages that are appropriate for ages 6 and up. And then the Buncee side of that is also now added on because now they have something where you can take those articles, you can learn about things, and then you can create something that goes along with those articles.
Mhm.
Wow. So cool. I want to just try it with my own son.
Yeah, go
So
for it.
just play around. How accessible is it on a tablet versus a Chromebook? Is one better than the other? What is your
It
opinion
is
on that?
cross-platform.
Mhm.
The last time that we used it on the iPads was a while ago because we're one-to-one computers. But with the iPads, it does seem to work better just running it through Safari. You
Okay.
can download it. There's an app for it, but it
Mhm.
does work just fine through the Safari app.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, it works cross-platform. So.
Yeah, it's cross-platform. I like it better on like a Chromebook or a laptop just because it's more space and it gives the kids more, you know, visual space to kind of see what they're working with. But yeah, it works on either.
And most importantly too is that there's the opportunity to share what you've created,
Mm.
right? So
Yeah.
once you've had that opportunity to create as a kid, you can then share it to things like Seesaw or to Microsoft Flip. And so there's not that like, okay, here's the end of the road. there's much more to do with that after you've created it.
That kind of dives into, I know you have a few books on app smashing and really talking about how you can take all of these resources and tie them together. So awesome. And how does the use of technology help elevate the critical thinking with our youngest learners? We kind of talked about this when we were meeting prior, but I would love to hear both of your takes on, our youngest learners. They have so much to say, and they're fabulous and hilarious to listen to, but they aren't necessarily literate in their writing yet, and things like that. So this is where ed tech really gives them the opportunity to expand.
Yeah, I think for us, thinking out loud, the platform that works the best for that is Microsoft Flip, which was formerly Flipgrid. Uh,
Mhm.
when we throw out a question on Flip and the kids respond to it, let's just use a math example. If it's a math word problem, if I were to stand up in the front of the room and walk through that math situation, they would be seeing it one way. However, if we do it on Flip, then you're going to have 17, 18, 19, however many kids you have in the classroom, all sharing different ways of how they solve that particular problem. And we know in math, there's never usually one way to solve. So you're basically opening up all of these different strategies now where the kids can then see what other classmates are doing. And so without hardly any effort on your part as the
Yeah.
educator, you've now just elevated the critical thinking in your classroom because now the kids are seeing and being exposed to different ways of how to solve.
Yeah, and for me, when we talk about critical thinking with my kids, we talk about metacognition a lot, and we talk about like the way I describe it to the kids is thinking about your thinking,
Hmm.
right? And so when you are posing a problem, or whether it's in any format, reading, writing, on a Canva creation, you're thinking about your thinking, and you're having to process through how you want it represented. And we talk about how all forms of like language and writing and speaking, their primary connection is to communicate, right?
Yes.
And so, how do all of those things integrate in a way that we can communicate our thoughts? And so, when you get the kids thinking that I can communicate my thoughts through my speech, I can communicate my thoughts through something that I create visually, I can communicate my thoughts through my writing. Once they see that all those things are all connected, it's really neat to kind of work on them simultaneously. And ed tech really, really lends itself to that.
Yeah, I completely agree. Awesome. Well, we were talking about how ed tech can be really overwhelming for some of our teachers post pandemic. We just talked about a ton of awesome resources, and going to conferences, going to PD. Everything sounds so freaking cool, right? Like even right now, I want to sign off and I want to delve into everything. But something that you guys kind of preach on is progress over perfection. And I want to quote you real quick before you answer this question because it really stuck with me. And I think it's really relatable for all teachers, whether they are using tech or not. And that's: confidence isn't walking into a room and thinking you are better than anyone else or know everything. I'm going to add on. Confidence is walking into a room and not comparing yourself to anyone else. So, with that, what is one piece of advice you would give to tech weary or tech overwhelmed teachers of our youngest learners?
I would say just start very simple, or especially if you're just starting, start small. Pick one platform and go with that. Master it. If you're maybe you're overwhelmed with the amount of tech that's being thrown your way, the same advice. Pick one thing. Don't try to do it all because if you try to throw in, let's just say, 4 or 5 apps throughout the day, that's a lot for your kids to absorb as well.
Mhm.
And so, just picking one of those will help the kids master it as well as you, and they'll become familiar with it. And then you'll start to see that progress will be perfected over time because the kids will be that much more familiar with it.
Yeah, we often refer to like your tech toolbox, and you think about like in your house, like when you need to fix something, generally you don't need like 17 tools to fix a problem. And depending on what your problem
Well,
is,
unless I'm fixing it,
yeah,
then
that's true. You're not allowed to fix anything
And
in
a
our house.
YouTube video.
But like that quote hits for me because like even like sharing ideas and teaching together, like I can't look at the things that even he does and compare myself. I feel awful all the time. Like, oh, my kids can't do that. And why does your class look so exciting and mine looks so boring? And like And then I have to remember, like, listen, I have a whole different set of learners than he does.
Yeah.
My age is different. The subjects I teach is different. The skills that my kids are coming in are way different. I have a lot of other things I have to unpack. And so sometimes you just need to, like, it's great to know of all the things and to have a way to keep those ideas, whether you're on like Pinterest or Wakelet, or save all the cool things,
Yes.
but keep them there for when you're ready and you need something different and you can go back and look, but find out like what your kids really like. Like, for instance, Joe's kids this year are phenomenal in flip. Like, the things they do would put my fourth graders like under the table. My kids are okay. My class this year is super into Minecraft EDU. Like, that is like all they want to do. And so rather than me trying to drag them through the mud and get them to use flip, which they can use okay, why not try to integrate the things that they're telling me that they're interested in, right? Because then you get that buyback, you get that classroom management, all of those other things come in. And so, like, there's a lot of great apps. Like, there's a lot of like really like racy kind of like answer the questions, like Hoot or quizzes.
Yeah.
They're awesome. I'm a reading teacher though. Most of the stuff I do isn't like math problems. It's not timed, and so it just doesn't fit within the parameters of what I'm teaching right now. And so I think that's what you have to really look at is like, what are my standards? What am I teaching? What do my kids like? And then start pulling those tools. And like you said, pick one, see how
Yeah.
they like it. If they like it, great. If not, try a new one, and then have the couple and just and stay with those.
Yeah, and the last thing I would add too is that don't get discouraged at the end of the day, because we talk about this all the time when we're speaking at conferences. Is that there's soft skills being learned in all of these applications that
Mhm.
are extremely important to your daily life, and so things like copying and pasting, right? Like,
Bold
Mhm.
letters,
yeah,
things that I think my kids should know, and then I come home like, well, that was a disaster.
right.
Yeah. Right.
All those little things that we completely forget
Ugh.
about. Like, if you really stop and you like reflect on what you're asking your kids to do with some of these processes, it's not as simple as hitting a record button and going. I mean, a lot of times there's
Mhm.
like 5 or 6 things leading up to that we don't even think about because we're just so used to hitting that button and going. And so, getting used to the fact that there's going to be these soft skills that the kids are picking up along the way, which are important for life, not even important necessarily for that particular standard that
Yeah.
you're going
And
for.
they
But
will transpire. Like, that's a big thing between the two of us. I'm in a testing grade, so I have tons of like state testing and standardized
Mhm.
testing, and he doesn't have as much here. He's in primary, and so I have to convince myself sometimes that like these skills will translate. And year after year, I see them. I see them
Yeah.
translating and helping my kids on those silly tests and things that they have to take because we took so long, and they've learned how to problem solve through something, or they've learned how to like click the buttons and figure out what they're looking for. And then that does transpire in those times when like I can't help them because our state testing now is all digital, right? And
Yeah.
so just having that, just not don't look at the other person and compare yourself to that, but just look at what fits your parameters and your learning space, and find those small little victories and those things that you can do with your kids, and then just slowly just build off of those.
Yeah, I completely agree. And we talked about literacy in general before we hopped on, and the fact that our youngest learners, some teachers think that maybe tech isn't developmentally appropriate for them. But our jobs as educators in the 21st century is to not only teach our kids to be literate, but we have to teach them to be tech literate, because whatever their future careers may be are going to require that they have tech literacy. So I completely agree. Well, I want to thank you guys for your time. Joe and Kristin have some awesome books out there. I will link them on our podcast resources. And how new is your interactive PD option? Is that new or is?
Well, we are in the classroom, so we only have a
Yeah.
certain number of days that we can be gone during the school year.
But
So if anybody's listening and is interested, get at us and let us know,
yeah,
because our dates are filling up.
and there's also some like a lot of really cool virtual opportunities, especially at West Coast. Something to do with a
Yeah.
district where we could jump on, or we could do something live app, with certain sessions, or maybe do something pre-recorded. We do a lot pre-recorded for districts and things based on their needs. So just email us. We are totally open, and try to make anything work that we can.
Awesome. Well, again, thank you guys for making the time. I hope that we can continue our conversation and hopefully interact in face to face at some point in time. I don't know when I'll be in Florida, but we'll make do. And yeah, Thank you so much. We can find all resources at kaylaharlow.com/podcast. I will link everything that we were talking about in regards to the specific resources, Buncee, and novel effect. And thanks again.
Thanks, Kayla.
Thanks.
Thank you for tuning in to today's show of Q Primary Presents Intentional Tech. If you have yet to sign up for Spring Q, you can sign up at springq.org. I hope to see you there. All resources mentioned in today's show can be found at kaylaharlow.com/podcast.